They don't, unless you have a connection to the military in some way, they're going to view military people as sort of a monolith. So I'm an Air Force person, but to them, I am a military person. And it's good to just be able to engage and share what I like to think would be thoughtful conversation from my perspective to change, at least affect views of the monolithic nature of the U.S. military, which is simply not.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of the GNSI Video Series from the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. I am Dave Oakley, the Academic Director here at GNSI, and it is my pleasure to be your host for today's episode. The GNSI Video Series is dedicated to bringing you wide-ranging conversations on a variety of topics with as many individuals as we can. This includes researchers, foreign dignitaries, authors, civic leaders, and many more. Today is my pleasure to welcome to the series one of the newest members of the GNSI team, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Jay Patrich. We're talking to Jay today as the very first member of GNSI's National Security Research Fellowship. As a research fellow, Jay will be spending the next year at USF conducting research, taking classes, participating in events, and engaging the community to fulfill his senior developmental education requirement. More on Jay's year ahead and his SDE experience later in the show. The National Security Research Fellowship is part of GNSI's larger educating practitioners initiatives. In addition to the fellowship, GNSI is working with USF's School of Interdisciplinary Global Studies to develop a one-year MA in International Affairs option for military officers seeking a civilian education, broadening opportunity. GNSI is also working with USF's Corporate Training and Professional Education to identify and develop executive education opportunities for practitioners and their organizations. In addition to educating current practitioners, GNSI is creating opportunities for USF students interested in pursuing national security careers. Last year, GNSI helped a group of students establish the Future Strategist program, which provides students opportunities to engage on national security issues and resources to support them in pursuing national security careers. This past summer, we sent 2 USF students to the 5-week International Security and Intelligence program at Cambridge University in England, an experience that we plan on supporting in the future. In April, GNSI is hosting the International Security Experience, which includes an Intelligence and Technology Conference, a Future Strategist Program student-ran conference, and an undergraduate strategy competition where teams of undergraduate students from USF and other universities will compete over 2 days in a single elimination tournament. As you can see, there is going to be a lot of exciting initiatives this year at USF. I'm sure you'll be hearing more about these initiatives and many more in this series and on GNSI's At the Boundary podcast. Jay, thanks for joining us here today for the discussion, and welcome once again to GNSI. We're very excited to have you.
Thank you.
I wanted to start off just with a basic question, an easy question. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Jay Patrich. I'm from Jacksonville Beach, Florida. I joined the Air Force in 2006 and started out as a C-130J pilot in Air Mobility Command, a couple deployments to Afghanistan out of that. And then in 2012, I joined Air Force Special Operations Command, specifically the MQ-9 community, on deployment to Djibouti out of that, as well as executing our mission from home station via satellite. I got to go to my intermediate developmental education at Maxwell at Air Command and Staff College, followed by a staff tour, a joint staff tour in North Carolina, where I got another deployment to Afghanistan and then one to Qatar as well. I went back to Cannon Air Force Base, and I was the director of operations for one squadron and then in command of another squadron. And then I find myself here in Tampa with you doing my fellowship to satisfy my SDE, or Senior Developmental Education. I have a wife and 3 kids, my oldest of which is a freshman here at USF with us.
So you're students together.
We carpool.
That's fantastic.
We have different podcast tastes.
She's not going to be listening to this?
No, not a chance.
So, as you look ahead for this year experience as a National Security Research Fellow, what are you hoping to achieve in your fellowship, and how do you view the fellowship?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the way I view this fellowship, some of them are highly experiential. You get a fellowship at an organization, you effectively can work at that organization. You see how it runs, what it thinks about. You learn about leadership or government from that perspective. This one, however, I view as highly academic, which makes sense because we're at an academic institution. The opportunity there is a couple of things. One, I get to produce research on topics that I think are pertinent or interesting to me. Additionally, I get to study some of the same topics that my peers in the more traditional professional military education schools study, but I get it from a different perspective. If I take a graduate level history course here, it's going to be significantly different than those taught at Army War College or Air War College at Maxwell. So I get that broadening. I get to develop skills, a lot of the same skills like communication, analyzing problems, designing a research question that my peers would get in the more traditional institutions. I just get it from a different perspective. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to making some contributions to the academic understanding of national security in whatever way I can. And I'm looking forward to all the interesting classes that I get to take along with a really diverse group of students that is available to me here at USF.
Yeah, so looking at the classes in the broader experience, I know the fellowship here is broken down into kind of three categories. You have the educational portion, the classes, the auditing classes, the other experience, the seminar with General McKenzie. You have the research element that's tailored to fit your needs, and then the broadening experience. Could you talk a little bit about each of those categories? So, like for example, the classes you chose to take this semester.
Of course, yeah. What would a fellowship be without some connection to the military or the profession of arms? And I think I get that really well from General McKenzie. Obviously, we have regular sessions that are open in terms of discussion, but led by him and the topics that he thinks are important to share with me and some other select students from around the university. And then the research is sort of a blend between the sessions with General McKenzie, which are highly focused on leadership, national security, officership, generalship, those kinds of things, and the more purely academic section. So I get to make an academic contribution to something that is a little narrower in terms of the scope. So I won't be researching something in philosophy. I'll be researching something in national security, especially military. And then on the other end of that spectrum is the classes that I'm taking. So I'll take this semester, I'm taking a graduate level political science course on intelligence and secrecy. And I'm also taking a graduate level philosophy course, which is not the kind of thing that's offered in regular PME institutions. However, it is a philosophy, it's a seminar on ethics, right? So all of those institutions would provide training they would provide classes or discussions on military ethics. And in my case, it is me and a professor who's worked at a university their entire career, as opposed to one who's been part of the larger national security apparatus. And then a very diverse range of students, people from Brazil, somebody from the country of Georgia, people preparing to be law students, one or two undergrads who are authorized to take the graduate level class. And all of them come from such diverse backgrounds. They have such diverse interests. And that allows me to sit in my seat with my experience and try to understand those concepts from different perspectives, as opposed to, a discussion with me and 10 other lieutenant colonels about ethics. I get to hear different opinions on it that are equally well formed. And I think that's really valuable.
And, I think it's interesting, as you know, from your experience in PME from my experience in PME, there's a huge component by civil-military relations. But, in those environments, as you point out, you're kind of away from it looking in because you're with other military officers. Really, in this environment, you're living civil-military relations. You're engaging with, civil society, and you're taken out of that comfort zone to some degree, and you're put into that. So it seems to me you're living the civil military relations aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. They all know that I'm active duty Air Force, and they're willing to ask questions or engage on topics that I would have expertise on, but also just the discussions that come up in my philosophy class the other day. We were discussing whether or not the US and China are in a Cold War, or whether it's an arms race, or all of those things. And the perspectives are just very different. And I get to share with, like I said, a very broad group of people. I get to share my perspective as a nearly 20-year national security professional, and hear their perspectives as, someone who just completed undergrad. They're 24 years old, or things like, or someone who's coming back to finish their PhD, but has just totally different experience from me. And it's really, I think, valuable to people engage in that manner.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I mean, beyond your educational experience, your broadening experiences you're getting as a senior military officer, you're providing a service and outreach, right, to this younger generation. And I think one of the important things, back to the civil military relations, it's the U.S. military. It's all of our military. It's the our citizens have ownership in it, and this really gets you an opportunity to engage with them and for them to better appreciate the military, its role, and I think to break down some of the stereotypes that they might have formed over years.
It is nice to be able to represent, in a unofficial capacity, the DoD, or whatever we're calling it, but they don't, unless you have a connection to the military in some way, they're going to view military people as sort of a monolith. So I'm an Air Force person, but to them, I am a military person. And it's good to just be able to engage and share what I like to think would be thoughtful conversation from my perspective, to change, at least affect views of the monolithic nature of the U.S. military, which is simply not. It's as diverse as anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think that's key. They see you as a person, and then they understand that there's like anywhere you have different personalities in the military, different backgrounds, socioeconomic, different perspectives. I think it's good for them to see that.
Agreed.
Yeah. You've already really hit the ground running here. You have a publication that is going to be coming out soon. Can you touch a little bit about that publication, about the research, and what drove you to be interested in the topic?
Thank you. So I've written a decision brief that is up for publication. It should come out pretty soon. And it's basically a thought piece that proposes new research, or hopes to describe gaps in research, and especially on special operations with respect to drones. I just view it from since 2012, I've been part of the special operations drones community as an MQ-9 pilot. And I've seen us change over time from 2012, 2014, and 2015 were big changes through the presidential administrations, all the way until the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Just seeing how those drones are employed, the thoughts, the new research that's going into not only the largest drones like the ones that I flew, but also much smaller, what we call Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. But these are just smaller, lower altitude, lower range. And we're just looking at how should special operations consider new technologies. And it's not as if drones are brand new, but their employment is evolving over time. There's significant academic research, especially with respect to the employment of drones in Ukraine and in the Azerbaijan-Armenian conflict. And so I'm looking at, is there some different way that we need to view these? Is there some different way that we need to employ these? Is there a different way that we need to be structured as a formation to facilitate the rapid innovation, but also transition our thoughts from the counterterrorism, permissive environment to more of a near-peer conflict? And especially if special operations can align with the new One Air Force design that the CSAF has put out. So it's really only about 1,600 words, but proposing those potential gaps. Like, have we thought about these things clearly, or have we been executing counterterrorism? And are we in danger of a failure of imagination to flip from manhunting, counterterrorism to peer competition, and what is SOFT's contribution in that small wedge of peer competition.
It sounds to me that the benefit that we were talking about earlier about stepping away from the military for the education side, getting the different student perspectives, the faculty perspectives, that maybe is different at times than the military because they're
Mhm.
not shaped by the same. It seems like your research, it might actually benefit your research also, able to step away from the institutions and get you time to think differently,
Right.
to engage with others who might not be tackling it from a military perspective, but they are dealing with technology in the evolution of technology and how that's affecting society from another perspective.
I think you're right. Here at the GNSI, I'm fortunate. I'm just surrounded by PhDs, and so each of these PhDs focuses on some sort of national security or international relations topics. So I'm able to show them my thinking and get their feedback, and I get a totally different kind of thought depending on who I talk to. But each one of them is incredibly valid. It's based on years of academic professional growth, and so that really helps me flip my thinking a little bit from something that's more specific, more like near term execution, to changing like thought paradigms that are potentially deeply ingrained in you know Western military thinking, or more specifically just United States Air Force thinking.
Now we talked about the education piece, talk about the research. The final one, which is kind of blended in both, is the broadening experience. I know you're doing you've been engaged with some students and you're looking at doing some activities in the future to support your research, but there's also the broadening aspect of it. Can you talk about a little bit of those activities and then the engagement with students that you hope to experience?
Sure, we've had well, I'm getting a lot of engagement with the students just being in these classes. The graduate level classes are fascinating because if you're not familiar with graduate level classes like this, they are almost all discussion. And so we do the readings ahead of time. We come prepared to try to synthesize our reading into new thought or more complex thought. It's really interesting to have those interpersonal engagements in class. Additionally, the GNSI has a lot of engagement with USF's Future Strategist program, which is undergrads, sort of grassroots, organizing themselves, engaging in strategy competitions, engaging in speaker series, helping each other out to sort of progress to be strategists, but maybe some sort of national security professional eventually, if that's the long-term goal. I think I'm gonna participate in the strategy competition here at USF with some undergraduates, maybe as a coach. So I'm looking forward to all that. Um,
And you're putting together a panel also for one of
That's
the
right.
conferences,
Yeah.
right?
That probably won't be, well, there'll be students in the audience, I
Yeah.
suppose. But yeah, so we're looking for, I'm going to lead a tech military strategy blend sort of panel with a couple of people. Hopefully, we're looking for, maybe somebody from the military, somebody from industry, somebody from academia, some sort of blend that we can have interesting conversations on how the military should think about adapting to new technology, which there is a lot of research on from the past maybe 50 years. People have been talking about how the military adapts to new technology or fails to, with some historical examples. So that'll be really interesting. We're doing that in April. Both of those events are in April.
One of the things I find whenever, I chat with people about the Educating the Practitioner initiative, particularly the portion that deals with educating the current practitioners, with those unfamiliar with the military and kind of career development and progression, they seem a little surprised that you would have a, military officer at a civilian university taking the graduate level courses. And so I was hoping you could discuss a little bit about the role education plays in your career development and what you see as the importance of it throughout your career.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking just the other day. I think the quote is misattributed to Thucydides, but it's if you draw a demarcation between your thinking man and your fighting man, you'll have fools doing your fighting and cowards doing your thinking. I think that's true. If you ask General Mackenzie, one of the keys to good generalship is a broad liberal education, right? And so there's always that there's a pull in PME, I think, and there's these two opposing forces equally valuable, both sides. One where it's like, what do you, when you finish your PME, what can you do? What new skill do you have? Are you better prepared to be a colonel? Are you better prepared to be a staff officer when you come out of Air Command and Staff College? Did you learn new skills that will help you present information to a general officer or something like that? And then there's the other one where you are building a well-rounded understanding of the world and how it works and society and history in that liberal education that General Mackenzie describes. So I think both of those are valid. I think this one more focuses on the second one, creating that well-rounded understanding of the world we live in, which I think is critical for military leaders. More specifically, the Air Force views education in a positive light. So after squadron command, it is challenging to progress in your career unless you complete senior developmental education. So there are lots of ways to do that. The majority of people will be able to complete it online with Air War College and correspondence. I'm fortunate enough that I get to come to this fellowship. I get to take graduate level classes here. I get to produce my own research, and that satisfies that requirement for me. So there's the bureaucratic nuts and bolts. Yes, I have completed my SDE, but then there's also growing as an officer, growing in my understanding of the planet and how people interact so that I can, like we talked about at the beginning, that war is a social construct. I can understand more than just where to put the missile or things like that.
No, it always seems to me, and this is the same way you're describing it, that the education within the military is really about lifelong learning and how are you nurturing an individual intellectually throughout their career. And so although you go away and do these year-long courses, year-long fellowship, it should be something that just continues to develop, and it's not episodic, like one of the critiques
Agreed.
has been in the past with it.
I think they do some, an enterprising learner can sort of start to get that early on in their career. When you are a captain in your late 20s, early 30s, you can go to squadron officer school. When I was a field grade officer, you can go to intermediate developmental education. And I think one of the keys that people can take out of that is the understanding that it is possible to understand things better than you do now, right? That there are ways, things that you thought were absolute truths have more facets than one that you thought of. Like the effects of dropping the nuclear bomb on Japan. It seems clear, but the more you read and the more like you're exposed to things like the Soviet invasion of Manchuria and what Japanese industry workers did the day after the nuclear weapons hit, you can start to realize that there's more to know. And at that point in your career, you've potentially been doing very well, and so you might need to have that shown to you. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that you can do that you can take out of PME is to figure out that there's more understanding to be had, and everything's more complicated than you thought it was.
And then, you pointed out with you had me thinking about the ethics class you're taking, the philosophy class, and the importance of grappling as a practitioner with these ethical questions. Because really, when we talk about the use of force, it's fundamentally about, it's an ethical decision, it's an ethical question. There's ethical challenges faced, and so taking a class like that, I commend you for, because I think as a professional, you're thinking about the importance of those ethical decisions, especially as you move up in the ranks and greater leadership positions.
Yeah, absolutely. That one is very interesting because it's not. It is going to use case studies, but it's more about the first part of making an ethical decision, which is understanding the situation and pulling apart the details of how one perceives things, how we describe events, actions, people, situations, how we categorize them, how we interpret them, and the problems that can come up from that. And so I'm finding that absolutely fascinating because that structure, which is well defined in philosophical research, can be applied to things beyond ethical choices. It can be applied to any interactions that you have in your entire life. Your entire life, you're going through describing situations to yourself. You don't realize you're doing this, categorizing them as a type of thing, and then interpreting them. And I think that those skills go beyond ethics, and that's just one of those like benefits that I wouldn't have expected that I was going to get out of this.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm thinking we're only in the third week of the semester.
Mhm.
You've already immersed yourself in the classes, already have a publication getting ready to go out there, and already engage with your fellow students, your
Mhm.
colleagues, and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So it's fantastic. I look forward to hopefully having this discussion again at the end of your experience in April or May, and to see how this experience has
Yeah.
shaped you and your thoughts as you depart USF.
I'm very interested in watching this in May of next year and seeing what I think about it. Uh,
Yeah. Well, hey Jay, thank you for joining us today. This has been fantastic, and good luck with the year. And I look forward to working with you and
yeah,
joining
same.
you on this journey.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Dave.